The clatter of plates hitting the floor echoed through Murphy's bar like a gunshot. Sarah's hands trembled as she bent to pick up the shattered ceramic, her oversized flannel shirt slipping off one shoulder. She'd been on her feet for 14 hours straight, working double shifts at 3 different jobs, and exhaustion had finally caught up with her. The lunch rush was brutal, and the rowdy group of bikers in the corner booth wasn't making things any easier. "Hey, sweetheart! We've been waiting 20 minutes for our food!" one of them shouted, his voice thick with irritation. Sarah forced a smile, the kind that never reached her eyes anymore. "I'm so sorry, sir." The kitchen's backed up. "It'll be out in just a few minutes." She hurried toward the kitchen, her worn sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. The sole of her right shoe had separated from the bottom last week, and she duct-taped it together because buying new ones meant choosing between shoes and her daughter's medication. That wasn't really a choice at all. The afternoon sun streamed through the dusty windows of Murphy's, illuminating the tired faces of regulars who'd been coming here for decades. This wasn't a fancy place, just a neighborhood bar where working-class folks grabbed a beer after their shifts and complained about their bosses. Sarah had been waitressing here for 3 years, ever since her husband died in a construction accident, leaving her with a mountain of medical debt and a 5-year-old daughter with a severe heart condition. "Order up, Sarah," the cook shouted from the kitchen window. She grabbed the plates, balancing 3 of them on her arms with practiced efficiency, and headed toward the bikers' table. They were an intimidating bunch, leather vests covered in patches, thick beards, arms covered in tattoos. The leader, a mountain of a man named Crusher, had a scar running down his left cheek and eyes that had seen too much of the world's ugly side. As Sarah approached, her foot caught on a loose floorboard, the same one she'd warned the owner about for months. She stumbled forward, and in that split second, everything seemed to move in slow motion. The plates tilted dangerously, and she twisted her body to save them. But her shirt caught on the edge of the table. The sound of fabric tearing cut through the bar's ambient noise like a knife. Crusher had instinctively reached out to steady her, but his large hand had grabbed her shirt instead. The flannel ripped clean down the middle, exposing what Sarah had been hiding beneath for months. The bar fell into absolute silence. Sarah's face went white, then crimson. She clutched the torn fabric to her chest, but it was too late. Everyone had seen it, the network of surgical scars across her abdomen, still pink and fresh. But it wasn't just the scars that made the entire bar freeze. It was what she was wearing underneath. A faded, threadbare undershirt with a child's drawing on it, done in permanent marker. A stick-figure mommy holding hands with a stick-figure little girl, surrounded by crooked hearts. Above it, in a child's handwriting, "You're my hero, Mommy." But that wasn't what stopped everyone's breath. Beneath the drawing, Sarah's ribs were visible, painfully, shockingly visible. The kind of thin that doesn't come from dieting or exercise. The kind of thin that comes from giving your dinner to your child night after night because you can't afford to feed both of you. The kind of thin that comes from choosing between eating and paying for heart medication that costs $800 a month. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she stood there, exposed and vulnerable in front of a bar full of strangers. She wanted to run, to disappear, to wake up from this nightmare. But her legs wouldn't move. Crusher stood up slowly, his massive frame towering over her. Sarah flinched, expecting anger, maybe even violence. Instead, the big man's eyes filled with tears. "Ma'am?" His voice cracked. I'm so sorry." He shrugged off his leather vest and draped it over her shoulders, covering her completely. It smelled like leather and motorcycle oil, and it was warm from his body heat. Then, this giant of a man, this tough biker who looked like he'd been in 100 bar fights, did something that shocked everyone even more. He knelt down in front of her. "I lost my sister 5 years ago," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying through the silent bar. She was a single mom, working herself to death trying to take care of her kids. She was too proud to ask for help, too stubborn to accept it when we offered. One day, she just collapsed at work. Heart attack. She was 34 years old and weighed 92 pounds. Sarah's sobs came harder now, her whole body shaking. Crusher looked up at her, his scarred face wet with tears. "I swore on her grave I'd never let another mother suffer alone like that. Please, let us help you." Old Tom, the bartender who'd worked at Murphy's for 40 years, was the first to move. He walked over to the register, pulled out a $100 bill from his own wallet, and placed it on the bar. For the kids' medicine. Then something extraordinary happened. One by one, everyone in the bar stood up. Construction workers still covered in drywall dust. A nurse still wearing her scrubs. A teacher who'd stopped in after school. An elderly couple who came in every Friday for fish fry. They all came forward, placing money on the bar. 20s, 50s, crumpled ones, and 5s pulled from pockets and purses. Some people were crying openly now. A young mother with a baby on her hip emptied her entire wallet. "I know what it's like," she said simply. But Crusher and his biker friends weren't done. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yeah, it's me. Remember that fundraiser we did for Jimmy's kid? We're doing another one. Tonight, Murphy's Bar, no bigger than that. Call everyone!" He turned to Sarah, who was watching in disbelief as the pile of money on the bar grew. "What's your daughter's name?" "Emma," Sarah whispered. "Her name is Emma. She needs a heart surgery. We're on a waiting list, but the insurance won't cover even half of it, and I've been trying to save, but—" "How much?" Crusher interrupted gently. $70,000. I've saved $11,000 so far, but we're going to get you that money," he said firmly. "All of it. My club, we do charity rides. We've raised hundreds of thousands for kids in need. Emma's going to get her surgery." Sarah collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed. "Why? Why would you do this for us?" "You don't even know me," Crusher squeezed her shoulder gently. "Because someone should have done it for my sister. Because Emma needs her mother. Because you're killing yourself trying to be a hero for your kid, but even heroes need saving sometimes." That night, Murphy's Bar became ground zero for a miracle. Crusher's motorcycle club spread the word, and within hours, bikers started arriving from all over the state. They organized a benefit ride for the following weekend. Local news caught wind of the story, and it went viral. The image of Sarah's daughter's drawing, shared with permission, became a symbol of the sacrifices mothers make for their children. Within 2 weeks, they'd raised not just the $70,000 needed for Emma's surgery, but enough to pay off Sarah's debts, buy her a reliable car, and set up a college fund for Emma. A local restaurant owner offered Sarah a better job with health insurance. The community that had always existed in Murphy's Bar had suddenly expanded to include thousands of people who'd been touched by Sarah's story. On the day of Emma's surgery, the hospital waiting room was filled with bikers in leather vests, sitting shoulder to shoulder with nurses, teachers, construction workers, and people from all walks of life. When the surgeon came out with good news, the surgery had been a complete success. The tough bikers weren't ashamed to cry. Crusher visited Sarah and Emma in the recovery room, bringing flowers and a teddy bear wearing a tiny leather vest. Emma, looking small and fragile in the hospital bed, but with color returning to her cheeks, smiled up at him. "Are you the man who saved my mommy?" she asked in a tiny voice. Crusher shook his head, his eyes wet. "No, sweetheart. Your mommy's been saving you all along. We just helped her a little bit." Sarah, holding her daughter's hand, looked at this group of unlikely angels who had appeared in her darkest hour. "I don't know how to thank you." "I don't have words." "You don't need words," Crusher said. "You just need to promise me something. When Emma's all grown up and healthy and you're back on your feet, you remember this feeling. And when you see someone else struggling, someone too proud to ask for help, you do for them what we did for you. That's how we change the world. One mother, one child, one act of kindness at a time." 6 months later, Murphy's Bar had a new tradition. On the last Friday of every month, people gathered for what they called Emma's Night, a fundraiser for families in need, organized by Sarah herself, with Crusher's biker club providing security and muscle for bigger projects. The loose floorboard had been fixed, and a small plaque hung near the bar. "Heroes come in all forms. Sometimes they wear leather vests." Sarah still worked hard, that was her nature, but she no longer worked alone. Emma was thriving, her surgery a complete success, growing stronger every day. And Sarah had gained something she'd lost when her husband died, a family. Not bound by blood, but by something stronger, the unbreakable bond of humanity at its very best. The torn shirt that had changed everything was framed now, hanging on Sarah's living room wall above Emma's drawing, A reminder that sometimes our most vulnerable moments become our greatest blessings. That sometimes when everything falls apart, it's only so something better can be built in its place.